Hey everybody, Chaz Molder here, Mayor of the City of Columbia, and happy to be joining in today on our second virtual town hall. If you recall, last week we had with us Alan Watson, the CEO of Murray Regional Medical Center, and Dr. Deborah Goldsmith to answer some questions specifically related to healthcare needs as it pertains to the COVID-19 crisis. And this week we're going to take it a little bit closer to home and hear from some very important people inside city government and inside City Hall. We're pleased to have with us today City Manager Tony Massey, who we're going to hear from momentarily. Also, newly appointed and anointed and sworn in Police Chief Jeremy Alsup is with us today. And then, of course, Ty Cobb, the Chief of Columbia Fire Rescue, is also with us, and we'll hear from all three of these gentlemen as we go through today. As you know, the purpose of these virtual town halls is to show, number one, the continuity of government. Your local government is still in operation and continues to provide the essential services that you come to expect and rely on. Another purpose of these virtual town halls is to show some transparency so that you can understand sort of what's going on at a time that may be difficult to understand, and also just to keep you informed. One key component of sort of going through this crisis, so to speak, is that you understand what's going on, what your options are, and how you can continue to utilize city services on a daily basis. And so with that, Tony Massey, I'm going to start with you. Tony is currently located on the third floor of City Hall, the city manager of the City of Columbia. And Tony, speaking of City Hall, let's just start with it. There have been some changes with respect to the City Hall hours of operation in order to sort of comply with the governor's order and maintain safety for all. So talk to us a little bit about what's going on at City Hall.
Be happy to, Mayor. With the governor's last executive order and adhering to it, we closed City Hall to the public. We did that at the middle of last week. We're continuing to have essential city staff come to City Hall and to perform their work. We're also having a staggered work schedule for those employees. And we had a department head meeting this morning where we discussed this. And right now the governor's order is scheduled, I believe, to expire next Tuesday. We don't know if he's going to extend it or not at this time. Whether or not he does or doesn't, we've decided that we're going to continue this scheduling through the remainder of next week, just as an abundance of caution for the employees. And then we'll just evaluate after that whenever we think it's possible to get back on a normal work schedule.
And Tony, in addition to City Hall, the building, so to speak, there's also been some other modifications that we'll let the chief speak to with regard to their departments. But with respect to, for example, Parks and Recreation, of course, we have a number of city parks in the City of Columbia. Talk to us briefly, if you will, about sort of what are the changes out with the parks.
Sure. Happy to, Mayor. We have sort of stair-stepped our response to this as the issue has grown and become more of an issue. And we started off by closing down the community centers a couple of weeks ago. With the most recent action by the governor, in addition to that, we kept the parks open, but we have closed the pavilions, disc golf, tennis courts, basketball courts, any area where there could be a group that could congregate, particularly more than 10. And we put that into effect last week, and we'll continue that through this weekend, next week as well. Also, too, to try to adjust to this new normal for the time being, is that one thing we're seeing is that there's a lot more people working in their yards right now, and we're getting a lot more brush in neighborhoods. So we have redirected our street department crews to assist the regular brush crews in picking up that brush during this period of time. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing to see that going on. So we are adapting to the times, and we'll continue to do so while we're under this situation.
Well, you make a good point. I know that there are some silver linings in a moment of crisis and in a moment that requires us to stay at home. And one of those might be that you're able to do some projects around the house that you might not have otherwise been able to. And so you raise another department, our Public Works Department, which of course oversees and runs our sanitation department as well. And all of those services that we count on with Public Works continue as well. Is that correct, Tony?
That is correct. City government goes on. We still have to provide those essential services, and you'll hear from both chiefs and their departments, but not only those, but street, sanitation. We're going to make sure the garbage gets picked up on a daily basis. wastewater continues to operate. Those things that are the backbone of city government, we continue to provide.
And Tony, just in closing briefly with you, this coming Thursday, we're going to have something that the city of Columbia, to our knowledge, has never seen before, and that is what will be a virtual city council meeting. Of course, everyone may recall that the study session for the month of April was canceled, which of course is not a voting meeting, so that meeting was canceled. But this coming Thursday, the second Thursday of the month, will be the full city council meeting, and that is going ahead as scheduled with some modifications. So Tony, talk about that if you will.
I'd be happy to, Mayor. As you know, with the governor's executive order allowing local governments to provide electronic council meetings due to these unprecedented times, we're taking advantage of that for our regular scheduled meeting Thursday night. We'll have a great majority of all the city council will call in through an app that we've loaded down on their iPads to allow them to participate and also to vote at the meeting Thursday night. Again, we're trying to be as normal as we can in abnormal times. Hopefully this will be the only time we have to do this, but the order is extended through the month of May. So if we have to do it, and I think that'll be your call, Mayor, and the council's call, whether you want to do it again in May or if we want to try to go back to the normal schedule. And I think just today, we just don't know.
Right.
Whether we're going to be able to do that or not. But you're right. That'll be the first time, I think, in the history of Columbia, and certainly the city government, we've ever done anything quite like that before. So, but we're set up for it. So.
Well, and the takeaways there is, I understand, number one, the city council meeting will move forward as planned. Number two, it's being done virtually, perhaps for the first time ever. And number three, it's being done in compliance with what the comptroller has provided to all local governments. And like all of our council meetings, that the video from that meeting will be available to the public to view at their leisure as well. So transitioning, if I can now, to Chief of Police Jeremy Alsup. Chief, you've had a pretty eventful couple of weeks, of course, beginning with being sworn in as Columbia's newest chief of CPD just last week in a very precautionary and socially distanced swearing-in ceremony that we'll all look forward to doing on a little bit of a larger scale when the time is right. But talk to us a little bit about what the department is doing from your standpoint during this COVID-19 crisis.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Mainly, we're doing everything we can to remind the community that we're here for them. We're practicing social distancing, whether it be taking reports by the phone, or we may have contact with individuals outside of their home rather than inside. But the main thing is that we are responding to all calls for service. We are here. We're here every day. And we do a lot of explaining of the governor's executive orders to those that might need it, whether it be through our social media or face-to-face. We've also increased our patrol in essential businesses at opening and closing time, doing more walkthroughs, and also in our city parks for those enjoying the outdoors.
Well, it does seem as though, Chief, also that there's been a little bit of an increased presence, perhaps, of CPD. I know I came home from work yesterday, and my kids were excited that they saw 2 police officers on the Segways just downtown or just off downtown. So, is it true that there is some increased presence that we may see in over the next several days as y'all sort of continue to serve as a monitor over the stay-at-home order?
Yes, sir. We're increasing even through the neighborhoods, the downtown area, like I said, out on the parks and outdoor activities, and in all essential retail establishments.
And Chief, from your perspective, understanding that we are under Executive Order 23 that the governor signed that requires us to stay at home unless we're performing or participating in essential services, which of course is outlined on the order and can be found on the governor's website. Do you find that for the most part, city residents and citizens are adhering to the terms of the order?
Absolutely. We've done some comparison to calls for service this time last year compared to now, and I can tell you that we're down over 12% in calls for services from this time last year. We're seeing the majority of individuals and businesses in compliance, and I'm happy to report that we've had no incidents requiring citations or any arrests for noncompliance.
Well, I know we've talked a lot about how in the worst of times, the best of humanity shines, and that we sort of hope that the city of Columbia would step up and exercise some leadership in adhering to what the governor has requested. So it's really good to hear from you, Chief, what you're seeing on the ground. If someone has a concern about the order or a question, or even wants to lodge a complaint, how would that person go about making that known if they don't see, CPD in person?
The very best way is to contact our non-emergency line. That's 931-388-2727. We have set it up to where we can take some of those complaints by phone, and they will be relayed immediately to patrol officers or supervisors to investigate. We want to encourage anyone who thinks that someone may be not in compliance to familiarize themselves with the order. On our Facebook page, we provided a link so that and told you where in the orders to look that defines essential businesses and essential activities. And if after educating yourself on the order, if you think there's some noncompliance going on, we welcome you to call 388-2727 and we'll check into it.
Well, thank you for that reminder. 388-2727 for non-emergency purposes. Please give that number, or please call that number. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that the City of Columbia instituted a text alert system several weeks ago. That if you text the word Columbia to the number 36000, you can join in the text alert system for important updates. So, Chief Alsup, thanks for your good work and service, and congratulations again on your selection as police chief. We're real excited and looking forward to great things with your department in the coming years ahead. Let me transition now to Chief Cobb with Columbia Fire and Rescue. And Chief, I know y'all have had a lot going on at your department as well, and actually one of the first departments, I believe, to modify your hours or your ability to take visitors at your fire stations. Can you give the public sort of an update on what those rules and procedures look like?
Yes, Mayor. As far as visitors at the fire stations, they're not allowed. If you have a need, we ask that you call the 388-2525 non-emergency number. That number is for public inquiries or anything that you need that is in a non-emergency capacity. But probably through the month of April, there will be no visitors allowed at the fire station until we get through this COVID-19 crisis.
388-2525, the non-emergency Columbia Fire and Rescue number. Chief, what are the precautions that you're taking or that your department is taking to assure the safety for not only your own first responders that you oversee, but also for the community as a whole? I think we may have lost Chief Cobb, and maybe looks like he rolled off. I will say though, just to sort of while we're having technical difficulties, and this is what happens when you operate virtually, is sometimes things don't go as planned. But not to speak for the chief, because he certainly has more knowledge here, but I can say that from what I understand, the Columbia Fire and Rescue has been outfitted with gloves and gowns and masks and eye protection, and they are utilizing all of the safety precautions under the CDC guidelines, recognizing that sometimes our fire and rescue, in addition to police department, are the ones that are going to be on the scene of an accident or make a house call in an emergency situation. And in many cases, they're not going to know what the conditions are inside the home or inside the vehicle for which they're responding to for the safety of others and for themselves. And so it's important to know that the Columbia Fire and Columbia Police are fully outfitted with the proper protection per the CDC guidelines, and that's for their own safety and for yours. It's also important to make note that if you are experiencing symptoms, and I'm sure if Chief Cobb are still with us, he would tell you, if you are experiencing symptoms, you have a couple of different numbers you can contact. Number one is the Murray Regional COVID-19 hotline, which is 931-540-4257. You could also call, as Chief Cobb mentioned, the Fire Non-Emergency line, which is 388-2525. I'd also encourage you to utilize your local Murray Regional or Murray County Health Department, and their phone number is 388-5757. And I know that number still without any notes because my mother used to work there. So 388-5757 is the number. I hope I'm right about that. I think I am. And you can call them with information. They are providing and conducting tests on a daily basis, as is Murray Regional and other private providers. But certainly Murray County Health Department is one of the local facilities providing the tests, and you can contact them at 388-5757 with questions or if you have symptoms and you want to know more. I know that Chief Cobb probably would have also talked about the importance of social distancing. We know that one of the easiest ways for this virus to spread is by having interaction with others. One of the scariest thing about the virus is that someone may have it but not have symptoms and then pass the virus on unknowingly to someone else who then could become symptomatic and unfortunately could experience far worse symptoms than somebody that had no symptoms at all. And so that's why it's important that you practice social distancing and that you do all the things that CDC is saying that you should do, including even wearing a mask when out in public. We know there's no question that you need to utilize essential services, and when you do that, you need to wear a mask in order to avoid any potential contact that would make you susceptible to COVID-19. I see Chief Cobb is now back, the wonder of technology. Chief, I think I pretty much went over most of what you were going to talk about, but I'll let you sort of pick up where you left off, though, with respect to what the fire stations are doing. I know that they're closed to visitors for the foreseeable future, but what else are y'all doing with respect to just making sure your own department members are outfitted with the necessary protection when y'all are on a call?
Well, you might see our crews look a little different if they respond to a call at your house, especially if it's a medical emergency, where the normal medical response is gloves and eye protection. Now, if you have those flu-like symptoms or COVID-19 symptoms, such as a cough, fever, or shortness of breath, our emergency responders will be wearing a mask, gloves, gown, and eye protection, and will also put a mask on you and probably do a patient assessment at least 6 feet apart. So our patient assessment and how we treat you is a little bit different, but it's for your own protection as well as protecting our emergency responders.
And Chief, wouldn't you want, if somebody has been exhibiting symptoms or has been tested for the virus or heaven forbid has also been a confirmed case of the virus, if they're calling in your department, and Chief Alsup, I'm sure you're the same way, to utilize services, emergency or not, you would certainly encourage them and want them to make sure that they let it known as soon as they possibly could before having interaction with any of your members. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Very important to give us as much information as possible when we're responding. A lot of times our police officers are there a few minutes quicker than EMS and emergency responders, such as firefighters. But the more information we can have as we gather our response and how we're going to treat you is important. But again, if you're experiencing those type symptoms, whether it's shortness of breath, cough, fever, you've had these symptoms for 2 to 14 days, we're going to treat you different. We're going to put a mask on you. We're going to evaluate you from at least 6 feet apart. And another thing, we're going to limit the number of people that come into your house to treat you, where usually you see a crew of 4 and a police officer. Now you'll see 2 firefighters in the house. So we're going to limit the number of people to limit the exposure possibility.
And Chief, just sort of in closing, one of the things that I know that City Manager Massey and all the department heads have been doing is keeping in close contact with the Murray County Health Department. And my understanding is, in fact, Andy Kinney, the director of the health department, briefed department heads this morning on some of the things ongoing out there. And I've already mentioned during the slight technical delay that they're open for testing and that you can go there and utilize test or call their hotline or call them at 388-5757. But what else about Murray County Health Department can you tell us from your briefing this morning with the director?
Well, let me say we've had briefings every day, and under City Manager Tony Massey's leadership, we've been in constant communication, department heads, police chief and I, Chief Alsup, just making sure that we're covering everything we can and making sure we're providing the best service to the citizens and residents that live here. We have been in constant communication with Murray County Health Department, which is under Director Andy Kinney. He's done a great job in providing us information and working with us. That is where we're encouraging people to go get tested that have these type symptoms with COVID-19. You can go to their address at 1909 Hampshire Pike, just past Columbia State Community College on the left as you cross a bypass off Hampshire Pike. Their hours are 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. If you want to call ahead of time, you can call 388-5757. It's a partnership approach. They've got the National Guard assisting them, but they've done a great job, and they're averaging probably 10 to 14 people a day that are being tested. So we want to encourage anybody with those type symptoms to reach out to them. But again, if it's life-threatening, if you're having shortness of breath, you want to call 911 and make sure our emergency responders come to you.
Well, thank you, Chief Cobb, and thanks for confirming that 388-5757 number for Maury County Health Department. I'm glad I remembered that one. Also, again, I'll just remind the 388-2525 for Columbia Fire and Rescue and 388-2727 for Columbia Police Department. You can also call City Hall at any time. Various numbers can be found on our website for departments, but since I have the city manager here with us today, 560-1510. We'll get you to the city manager's office for further information. So we just want to say thank you for watching this. We understand that we're in a difficult time in a moment that has a lot of uncertainty, as the chief mentioned, but also in a moment that we believe that doing the right things and adhering to these guidelines and staying at home, we can make our comeback sooner rather than later. And with your help, we can do that. Do it for yourself, but also do it for your neighbor and do it for your community. So for Tony Massey, our city manager, and our police chief, Jeremy Alsup, and fire chief, Ty Cobb, we say thank you for watching and keep doing your part, and we will get through this together. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mayor.